We take it for granted when we plug it in, hit the switch, turn the key. Consumer demand higher than ever. Now we're seeing a major power shift.
You can't have a carbon-free future without nuclear.
Change, fueling new industry and jobs.
The domestic demand for graphite is enormous.
The cost to consumers.
Either pay the bill or have your lights turned off.
And the cost to our environment. Doors now opening to greener technology.
You don't have to worry about or consider any health issues. You don't have to worry about anything getting into the water table underground.
The role of state regulators.
Solar is great for an extra add-on, but it doesn't compare to using fossil fuels for your baseload electricity.
The debate over what's clean, what works, and the price tag.
If you do something unwise to produce energy, somebody's got to pay the bill.
Powering Alabama forward.
Hello, and thanks for joining us. I'm Brenda Ledun.
And I'm Stephen Quinn. You're watching our special town hall, Powering Alabama Forward. It's an issue that affects all of us. How will we power our homes, cars, and businesses in the future? The country is moving away from fossil fuels. Wind, solar, hydro, and other sources of renewable energy are growing in popularity. Alabama, in many ways, has fought the shift, but when it comes to jobs, protecting the environment, and meeting the demand, clean and green energy is seen as a significant part of the future.
But it's also important to make the transition affordable. Based on 2021 census data, our state ranks 6th in the country for people living in poverty. That accounts for more than 16% of the population, or just over 800,000 people. Right now, the average monthly electric bill for Alabamians is $147.75. That's the third highest in the country. Managing those high bills is harder now than just 18 months ago. Within the last year, Alabama Power customers have seen 3 rate hikes. ABC 3340's Muriel Bailey shares one father's story to make ends meet and has advice on how you can save.
We're coming off a summer that delivered record temperatures in Alabama, leading to air conditioners working longer and harder than in years past. And many people are being met with much higher bills for trying to stay cool.
A lot of people out here are really, on their last leg, paycheck to paycheck.
Terrence Robinson is a retired veteran who picked up part-time work to take care of his daughters and keep the bills paid.
I go to the grocery store with $100. I only got like 4 or 5 things, and where did $100 at? We all do work.
Robinson says it doesn't stop at the grocery store. He's seen an increase in his power bill.
What is your bill usually each month, typically?
$200, now it's going up to $290.
So how is it for you having to manage a higher, $90 higher a month on top of everything else?
You have to adjust. There's no one you can go and complain to.
Recently, he applied to receive 6 months of utility and rental assistance from the Birmingham Urban League.
You either pay the bill or have your lights turned off. They was diligent in helping and getting things done.
William Barnes, the league's president, says since the program began in May 2021, they've paid $1.5 million in utility bills on behalf of Jefferson County residents. That totals almost 2,700 families.
This money was put in place due to the recovery from the pandemic, right? And so what we know is that there's still people that, believe it or not, are still trying to recover from that pandemic because of maybe they're underpaid or they still haven't found a job in their field.
This year alone, they've dispersed $450,000 to help pay utility bills.
So unfortunately, the recent heat wave and prices going up with utilities has caused even more of an issue. And we certainly are seeing an overwhelming response, and people are very, very concerned about the high bills that they're receiving.
Alabama Power offers budget billing where you pay a similar amount each month, as well as assistance programs to help pay your bill. They also offer tips on how you can save. But before we share them with you, let's go to our first town hall question. We asked, how much thought do you put into adjusting the thermostat?
A lot. I put a lot of thought into turning up the thermostat.
Why is that?
That determine how much is going to come out your pocket.
Well, we try to set it and leave it, but everybody has different settings that they like. Some like it cooler, some like it lower, so we've tried to just come up to an equal medium and just leave it.
I don't put much thought into it. I like keeping it cold, so.
Not a whole lot. If we're hot, we turn it down. If we're cold, we turn it up. Mine stay on 75 year round.
Pretty smart. We asked Alabama Power where you should set the thermostat to cut those costs.
One of the things we recommend is set it and forget it. So if you set your gauge on about 78 degrees, 77, finding that comfort zone for different people is different places, but if you can set it on about 78 and leave it there, then you're going to use that air conditioning less often.
Other power saving suggestions: install a smart thermostat, which you can program and control from your phone. Wash and dry your laundry during off-peak hours after 8 o'clock, and electronics not in use, unplug them.
While you may be looking to save, utility companies are working to find ways to meet increasing demand. Valerie Bell spoke with both Alabama Power and Spire on just how they're working to do that.
Alabama's growth has allowed Spire's business of natural gas to prosper.
As Alabama has grown through economic development and more industries locating here, that's brought in new residents, which has boomed the housing market, and we just follow it.
Right now, the utility's largest customer in the state is Alabama Power.
We generate power in multiple ways, and having that diversity is something that makes us more reliable.
30% of that power generated is from clean energy. Alabama Power says it's something taken into account when thinking about processes in the future.
Solar, hydro, wind, we are exploring all those ways.
Alabama Power had explored an opportunity to build a pumped storage hydroelectric generating facility on Chandler Mountain, but walked away from the proposal after members of the Public Service Commission went on record with opposition to the plan.
That project was one that would provide power to about 400,000 homes over a year's time, and it was a part of what we're doing all the time, which is exploring ways that we can make sure that we meet the demands of a growing customer base in the state of Alabama.
Is that particular project viable anywhere else in the state other than Chandler Mountain?
That's why we have to explore. That's not a question I can answer sitting here.
As the company leaves its options on the table, it touts its 99.98% reliability rate. That's attributed to evolving smart grid technology.
Fault isolation and service restoration, FISR, what it does is it identifies where the fault is, and then it routes power around the outage and gets the customer's power back on more quickly.
Severe weather in Alabama, including tornadoes and strong winds, can trigger widespread power outages. Tools such as FISR have proven effective.
What we want to do is make sure that our response time gets smaller and smaller so that our customers are experiencing less and less time without the power that they need.
But everything comes at a price. Taking a look at 2021 data from the Energy Information Administration, its numbers show on average, Alabama customers paid the third highest amount a month for electricity compared to other states in the country. The only states paying more: Connecticut and Hawaii.
The amount that our customers pay puts us at 3 in the country, but it's because of use, right? So the amount that we charge, the rate itself, is about the middle of the pack. But what our customers pay puts them at about 3 in the country because of the amount of usage. Our customers just use more energy.
Alabama Power had 3 rate hikes since last year. In that time, Spire increased its rates once, adjusting for cost, reportedly not seeing any profit to the company.
I can say it's been relatively flat over the last 5 years in the state of Alabama.
The company says it invests a number of dollars in research and development to keep the costs down.
It's also using technology with planning our work. It's also getting aging infrastructure out of the ground. So the more we get aging infrastructure out, the new infrastructure in, it reduces the amount of costs that go into maintaining older infrastructures.
In the 170 years Spire served customers, the way the company processes natural gas evolved.
As we continue to go through the political landscape or conversations around greener, cleaner fuels, a cleaner country, I don't think there's any doubt that natural gas is cleaner than it's ever been.
And Spire believes its product will have a place in Alabama for years to come.
If you think about EV, electric vehicles, efficiencies through other products being manufactured, at the core of all of that is natural gas.
As for Alabama Power and where that company sees itself 5, 10, and 20 years from now,
I think the way to think about it is that we're leaving the options open for how we can provide energy to our customers in a way that's reliable and safe.
We wanted to know about Alabama's infrastructure and what the future holds for our state. So I turned to two experts at Auburn University. As we continue on in this special, I'm joined by two of the top minds here at Auburn University. Thank you, Dr. Edward Mihati and Dr. Bruce Tatarchuk. You both have various backgrounds in electric and chemical engineering, respectively. Taking advantage of your knowledge, I want to, for the benefit of our viewers, explain a little bit about Alabama's energy portfolio. How does Alabama produce much of the energy that people at home use on a daily basis?
Okay. I did a little bit of looking things up because when I first came to Alabama 40 years ago, the bulk of our energy was produced with clean coal. Today it's changed. The energy portfolio has dramatically changed. We're using about 40% clean coal, 30% natural gas, which has been the big growth area, and then the other 30% is distributed primarily nuclear with a little bit of hydro and some other means. But in the last number of years, that has been the big transition. That's been the growth in the use of natural gas in power plants.
How does that relate to other states? Is that similar to what we see in a breakdown of other states in terms of the reliance on those different forms?
The national use of nuclear is about 20% across the country. That's very similar to what we have here. Plus the recent installation of the Vogtle power plant in Georgia really reinforces that. That's a 1.1 gigawatt plant that'll service 500,000 homes. So it's a big add to the system.
Dr. Milioti, you've looked at alternative forms of energy as well. Given the breakdown that Dr. Tatarchuk just explained, do you see that changing in the future, or is that really kind of how the pie is going to break down for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity in Alabama, especially because the watershed here is kind of high. So we got plenty of rain. And hydropower, we got plenty of hydro potentials. There are a lot of dams that are still not used for generating electricity. You know, it's only for agriculture, recreations, that can be easily converted into electrical power generations.
Do you think that Alabama's power grid is adequate as it stands now to handle the growth in energy resources that are needed?
There's a great emphasis right now nationally and certainly within the Southern Company region, of which Alabama Power is one of them, to build out and go for a more electrified thing because as Dr. Balaji is talking about, you have a lot of little different power points and generation sources, but what's the common thing? That's putting them on the grid so you can produce energy at one place and send it somewhere else. So we'll see an increase in the activity of the grid, electrification. That's combined right now with a decarbonization emphasis coming from industry. So they're actually, Department of Energy and a number of programs we participate in are actually looking to replace fossil fuel burning activities at a local industrial plant with, for example, an electrical heater instead of burning the hydrocarbon locally. So I think we'll see a greater growth on that, and Alabama Power is certainly is in the process of doing that.
So you've talked about growth, and you've talked about a shift to maybe smaller but more a broad view of hydro as energy forms. What I'm hearing is change in terms of how we get it.
But let me interrupt too. While a lot of the renewable energy sources are great opportunities for two reasons, they produce power and they may eliminate a environmental concern. So if you can take vented methane from an animal processing plant or an animal digester and all of a sudden produce electricity, you solve two problems at the same time. One is a reduction in global warming gases and the production of power. But a lot of these are small and they're remotely scattered. Even if you build them to capacity, they probably won't meet our base load. Our base load is going to come for the foreseeable future on nuclear, gas, and clean coal.
Alabama is still one of the poorest states in the union. When it comes to this, what kind of cost burden to the ratepayer, to the consumer, could you see from all of these changes that you guys are talking about?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that you have to do is you can't violate the laws of thermodynamics. If you do something unwise to produce energy, somebody's got to pay the bill. So the more that you do things that don't represent good engineering science, good thermodynamic practice, then you're going to incur higher and higher costs. We always, have talked about NASA being an innovator of technology. And if you want to think of NASCAR, they're an innovator of technology as well. So there's certain sectors that are based on performance that aren't primarily worried about cost, because they're worried about, safety and protection, defense. But they'll develop a technology, and then the benefits of it are, available to everyone.
Look forward to seeing that. Gentlemen, thank you both so much for your insights on this. Appreciate it.
In Walker County, Inga Investments is in the early stages of developing what could be a 300 to 500 acre solar farm. The project is estimated to be a $525 million investment initially, with the potential to grow to $800 million. In Cherokee, Alabama, a 670,000 solar panel project was completed in 2021 by Ørsted, the largest in the state. ABC 3340's Aaron Wise went to the farm to see how the energy production works.
Nestled on a 3,000-acre plot of land in Cherokee, Alabama, you'll find the Ørsted Muscle Shoals Solar Farm.
This site produces 227 megawatts, which is roughly equivalent to 40,000 plus homes.
670,000 energy-producing solar panels cover 1,800 acres. Plant manager Patrick Gent says Alabama ranks in the top 20 states for sunlight. That, combined with the land available, makes the state a good place for solar production. He walked us through the process.
Silicon is inside of it. They are designed like pattern-wise. If you get close to the panel, you can see the pattern inside. That causes the electrons to flow, builds up a voltage.
The voltage is directed to inverters throughout the property where energy is converted to AC power. It then travels to a substation.
We're a 161 kV substation that goes over to the substation beside it, which is TVAs, and goes into the lines going to your customers.
Even when the sun isn't shining as bright, electricity is still produced.
They are designed to go into mode to track and follow the sun. So they will find the point where they have the maximum amount of irradiance of sunlight, even when it is cloudy, to produce electricity.
Aside from the construction phase, Gent says the solar farm is emission-free, having very little, if any, impact on the surrounding environment.
You don't have to worry about or consider any health issues. You don't have to worry about anything getting into the water table underground. These things don't have any kind of harmful components. They're all made out of silicone glass, basically what you find in sand.
The panels used at the facility are 100% recyclable. If one fails,
we use First Solar panels, and any of them that break, crack, or have to be replaced, we store them, send them to be recycled, bring them back, and replace them.
The vegetation growth here is the biggest issue that the crews here deal with. It can grow so much that it blocks the solar panels.
Just like standing in the shade. We need as much sunlight as we can get.
There is a full-time vegetation management crew on site, along with 450 sheep from a local farm to keep weeds at bay.
They have areas that's difficult for weed eating, or areas that may have water or erosion, some places that you can't really get a lawnmower into. Sheep take care of it. Sheep will go anywhere.
Ørsted has a long-term power purchase agreement with the Tennessee Valley Authority. The farm produces energy for Meta, Facebook's parent company, located in Huntsville, as well as homes across the grid.
that is a way that we can generate a tremendous amount of clean, green energy at the lowest possible cost.
TVA intends to be carbon-free by 2050. Right now, solar energy makes up around 3% of energy production for the company. A 2,800-acre solar facility in Lawrence County was recently announced, adding to the company's solar energy production.
What's really special about this is First Solar, panel manufacturing, has also moved into Lawrence County. So we're actually going to buy the panels from First Solar in Lawrence County. So that allows us to build local, buy local, and generate local energy.
The Lawrence County solar facility is expected to come online in 2027. Scott Fiedler, a spokesperson with TVA, says homegrown electrical energy will be the key to powering not only Alabama, but the country forward to meet growing energy demands.
Right now, we're seeing growth in our region at 3 times the national average. So we're projecting that we are going to have to double or even triple the system that took us 90 years to build.
The company says it diversifies energy production to make energy more affordable to their 10 million customers across 7 states.
When the sun is shining, we use as much solar as we can. When it's raining and the Mother Nature brings us rain, we use a lot of hydropower because that's free energy from Mother Nature. On those days that are normal, we use a lot of nuclear energy. About 40% of our fleet is nuclear on any given day.
Gent says the landscape of energy production in the state is changing and energy producers have to change with it.
In Alabama, some of the old coal-fired plants that we have in the state, they're old and they're shutting down. They have to be replaced because the demand's not going down, and I believe this is a very good investment for it.
Aaron Wise reporting. As for the solar project in Walker County, the company exploring the possibility says a final decision will be made in 2025. In Alabama, companies like SEPCO in Alabaster can save thousands of dollars each month by installing solar panels. The solar panels on the business cut the power bill from $15,000 down to $6,000 a month. Homeowners don't get the same payoff with solar. In fact, Birmingham nonprofit GASP claims homeowners are penalized for switching to solar. It's the subject of a federal lawsuit filed in 2021 by the Southern Environmental Law Center.
You really can't separate Alabama Power from the PSC when it comes to this issue. They're in lockstep, very hostile towards clean, renewable energy. Even Mississippi is leaps and bounds ahead of where Alabama is right now.
The Alabama Public Service Commission countered, saying it has generally been supportive of renewable energy, but we were also told the number of Alabama Power businesses and residential customers using solar energy is considered to be non-public customer data.
And when it comes to utilities and customers, Alabama's Public Service Commission is intended to strike the regulatory balance. The 3 APSC members are elected. I sat down with the commission's chairwoman, Twinkle Cavanaugh, about her role in deciding the future of energy here in the state. Twinkle Cavanaugh believes her job is simple.
My whole goal here is that consumers have the cheapest power possible and the most reliable power possible.
Cavanaugh has served as president of Alabama's Public Service Commission for more than a decade. She's also the former head of the state's Republican Party and makes no secret of her political views and their impact on policy decisions.
If you have a conservative viewpoint, you better know I'm with you. I try to take care of all citizens in the state of Alabama.
She's vowed to fight against, quote, liberal energy policy. As for the push towards electric vehicles, she doesn't see it.
Right now, I don't see an overwhelming move to electric vehicles in Alabama. I know that the federal government is trying to almost mandate it, but the reality is people's pocketbooks tell them what they can and can't afford.
But the push is coming in the form of federal dollars. The state will receive $79 million over the next 5 years to install charging stations. The power for them will come from Alabama Power, the utility whose rates and profits are set by the commission.
The consumer needs a voice, and the consumer needs to be treated fairly. And that's why wherever I go, television, radio, I give out my cell phone and my office number and say, call me. I love serving you, but I also believe because I'm serving you, I need to be accessible.
Kavanaugh says she's pushed back on utilities like Alabama Power when it's needed. She points to denying the company's request seeking 5 solar projects.
Solar is great for an extra add-on, but it doesn't compare to using fossil fuels for your baseload electricity. When you think about solar, I like to think about it as when I need something to wear to work. A good black suit will get me through just about all 5 days of work. But sometimes I like to add a little jewelry or dress it up a little bit with a red blouse. That's what solar is. Solar is the jewelry or the red blouse for our energy portfolio here in the state of Alabama.
Most recently, she spoke out publicly against the Chandler Mountain project, echoing complaints from residents even before the proposal was brought before the commission. Kavanaugh says that she met with Alabama Power before the release was made.
I did not want them to spend the consumer's money doing that if I knew ultimately I would be against it.
The commission also decides how much utilities can earn. It's called rate of return. It ordered refunds after the utility raised rates 3 times in 2022. But renewable energy advocates like Energy Alabama argue the commission allows Alabama Power to enjoy bigger profit margins than similar utilities elsewhere.
We have some of the highest profit margins here in Alabama, so customers are paying a lot more here for the same product that they get elsewhere in the country. And then we have some of the dirtiest resources, and not just are they dirty, they're extremely expensive compared to many of our neighboring states. I mean, they're delivering for shareholders, not for customers.
Critics have called for formal rate hearings. The hearings, which can last up to a week, force all subjects to face cross-examination from commission staff. Kavanaugh held one when she first took the job and has opted since for more informal hearings.
When can we expect to see another rate case for Alabama Power?
The minute I see that they are out of line, we will call them back in for a rate case. I think the amount they are allowed to earn, the percentage they are allowed to earn right now, literally in our economy today makes sense.
As for Kavanaugh, she wasn't joking about calling her, by the way. You can find her number within the Our Story, which is located on our website, abc3340.com.
As you just heard, Twinkle Kavanaugh believes fossil fuels must continue to produce the base load of power in Alabama. Those remarks come as our state is home to the largest greenhouse gas emitter in the nation, the Miller Steam Plant, taking over that distinction in 2015 after the Scherer plant in Georgia started to ramp down production. According to data from the Environmental Protection Agency, as of 2021, which is the most recent data available, the Miller Steam Plant generated nearly 21 million metric tons of CO2. That's about 5 million more than the next closest plant in Missouri. The Miller Steam Plant is fired using natural gas. Data from the U.S. Energy Information Administration shows natural gas is used by 7 of the state's 10 largest power plants. Those plants accounted for 38% of the electricity generated in Alabama in 2021. Less discussed, but important to understanding energy in Alabama, our state is home to 2 nuclear power plants with a total of 5 reactors. Plant Farley in Houston County and Browns Ferry in Limestone County, seen in this video, produced 32% of the power generated in the state in 2021. The U.S. Energy Information Administration says Alabama is the nation's 4th largest producer of electricity from nuclear power. In fact, the Browns Ferry nuclear power plant is the 2nd largest in the nation. And more power from nuclear power plants is now being pumped into Alabama from surrounding states. In July, Georgia Power fired up a new nuclear reactor at its plant south of Augusta. It's the first new nuclear unit built from scratch in the United States in decades. But nuclear doesn't have to be massive. In fact, one business investing in Alabama is counting on an increased demand for microreactors. Ultra-Safe Nuclear Corporation announced its intent to build a microreactor production facility in Etowah County. The plant means 250 new jobs for Gadsden. At the plant, the facility will manufacture, assemble, test, and inspect the non-radiological modules needed to construct its advanced microreactors. So we've discussed gas, nuclear, and solar energy production. Now you may be wondering, well, what about hydro? Well, as of 2021, Alabama ranks 6th in the nation when it comes to generating hydroelectric power. There are 23 hydroelectric dams on Alabama rivers, but they only accounted for 9% of the state's net generation in 2021. A moment ago, we heard from Twinkle Cavanaugh. You heard her position on fossil fuels. She sees them as the foundation for power in Alabama going forward. But there's a well-documented impact on the environment, which is a chief concern with any energy source. Nothing is 100% green. There will be waste, disruption, and a cost to transition. Here's Cynthia Gould with that part of the equation.
Words cannot describe how opposed I am to this project.
Plan on living and dying on Chandler Mountain.
The tiny community of Steele, Alabama, took on industry giant Alabama Power.
What are my options? Provide a list of the landowners that this is going to wipe out.
Passionate protest this summer as neighbors fought plans for a hydroelectric pump storage facility here on Chandler Mountain. Hydropower touted as cleaner and greener, but homeowners like Fran Summerlin argued it would destroy their way of life.
They're angry and they're scared and they're emotional. It's targeting a poor area that thought that they wouldn't fight.
Communities signaling they will no longer stand on the sidelines for decisions of this magnitude.
I wish that they would just grow a heart. I know that they have investors, and I know this is a money-making thing, but sometimes the costs are just too high. The cost of wildlife, the cost of this, it's just too high.
Alabama Power scrapped the project, so how do we safely meet the growing demand for power?
You got solar farms all up North Carolina, which has virtually the same climate as we do, so it works there, it would work here.
The small modular nuclear reactors, I think that's what's in our future, and I think eventually they will go to fusion as well.
While hydropower didn't work on Chandler Mountain, it's been working for the Tennessee Valley for 90 years.
My grandfathers helped build TVA.
TVA's Chickamauga dams can power 100,000 homes.
Technology is still as good today as it was then. It's all clean, green, carbon-free energy.
Spokesperson Scott Fiedler explains 60% of energy TVA now generates is carbon-free. Hydro, 15% of that. Testing is underway for a new hydro facility in North Alabama near Pisgah, similar to TVA's pump storage at Raccoon Mountain. Think of it as a giant water battery harnessing and storing electricity. Over the next 5 to 10 years, TVA plans to retire its coal fleet, relying more on nuclear and renewables.
Our goal is by 2035 to add about 10,000 megawatts of solar. So that means we're going to be doing a massive build over the next 10 years as we shutter the coal plants and start moving and transitioning to a cleaner economy. You can't have a carbon-free future without nuclear. At TVA, we're looking at small modular reactors. We operate 7 large units, but these would be smaller 300 megawatt units that we could put in locations. We're seeing a new nuclear renaissance. TVA is a leader. We turned on our Watts Bar plant, which was the first of the 21st century. Vogtle down in Georgia just turned on theirs.
Fiedler says it's a more reliable mix of energy options at a lower cost, fueling the region's growth.
Right now, about 70% of America from those top utilities pay more for electricity than we do right here in the Tennessee Valley.
It's all about balance going forward and figuring out how we get to more clean, renewable technologies while also ensuring that we're not, significantly harming our environment or the people who live here in Alabama.
Southern Environmental Law Center's Christina Tidwell says solar should be a bigger part of the mix in Alabama.
So moved.
Second.
Yes. SCLC has filed a federal lawsuit against the Alabama Public Service Commission over policies it contends allow Alabama Power to charge fees that are too high for solar users.
For the average solar system, you are paying over $27 a month, and that's before you ever turn on the lights or use any power from Alabama Power. And that equates to over $300 a year and to over $9,000 over the 30-year life of your solar system.
She says Alabama as a state is dead last in solar capacity.
There is tremendous room for growth here in sunny Alabama. If you look at our neighbor Georgia, they're ranked 7th in the country, and they have 5 times the amount of solar that we have here in Alabama. And they have 5,000 solar jobs compared to less than 1,000 here in Alabama.
Tidwell says replacing coal with another fossil fuel, natural gas, is a mistake.
Gas is not clean. The primary ingredient in natural gas is methane, and methane is a potent greenhouse gas. Gas also produces carbon dioxide when it's burned, and it's very destructive as well in terms of production and how they extract it.
And according to Tidwell, it's already hitting ratepayers.
In 2020, to move forward with a large gas expansion. And last year we saw 2 rate hikes due to the price volatility of gas. Investing in gas is not a way to lower our power bills.
No power source is completely free from impacting the environment, whether it be batteries for electric vehicles or solar panels and wind turbines, which have a lifespan. Some researchers contend hydropower isn't all green either. Dams and reservoirs are a source of greenhouse gas emissions. Environmental groups say coal offers a hard lesson in how destructive our hunger for energy can be. The toxic mess left behind in the form of these gigantic coal ash ponds is seeping into our groundwater and rivers.
We now have, over 50, in some cases 70, 80 years of coal ash waste to deal with. It's one of the largest industrial sources of waste in the country that future generations are going to be dealing with. And there is no perfect solution because it's so nasty and there's so much of it.
So how much power are we using? Well, according to the U.S. Energy Information System, in 2021, the average household in Alabama pulled more than 1,100 kilowatts per month. With more than 2 million residential customers, that works out to just over 2.6 billion kilowatts of energy consumed in Alabama per month. Do you know how much energy you're pulling per day? Our next town hall question, how many power devices do you think you use a day?
That's a good question. My cell phone, obviously, my iPad, and my work computer and my personal computer when I get home. So I use that. So yeah, probably like at least 4.
Work out of the house, so a lot. Probably like 6 or 7. Yeah.
What are those things that you're using?
AirPods, Apple Watch, my phone, my TV, my iPad, and my laptop.
I use about 3 power devices every day.
So me being a business owner, I have my 2 cell phones, laptop, tablet, like 5 or 6.
As we continue our energy special now, I'm joined by Dr. Michael Price with the University of Alabama. Dr. Price, when people think of power, they think of electricity. Where does Alabama's grid stand in relation to other states?
Like all states, so Alabama, the way that the grid is set up is that you have regions throughout the country that largely think of these as being units where electricity is going to be moved from power plants to the end consumers on it. States will have different levels of production capacity within, and they'll have different demands on it, right? But the idea is that the grid manager is trying to balance supply and demand at all times, right? So that if I turn on my lights, there's power coming into power the lights that I'm trying to turn on. Actually, when you think about Alabama on it in terms of production, it is currently 7th in the nation in the amount of electricity that's produced internally within the state. And in large part, that's because of the amount of nuclear that we're bringing on in the state, and also, slowly we're integrating more renewables onto the grid.
When you talk about renewables as well, we think of different forms, natural gas, you think of coal. I know those were definitely brought up when we had the energy impact with the situation in Ukraine. to borrow a phrase from electricity, right? When it comes to those renewables, it's certainly not like flipping a switch. How do you take advantage of those, and how are you able to amp those up within the larger, broader context of energy?
So one of the interesting things and challenges that we face both regionally, nationally, internationally, when you think about renewables in particular. So think about here largely solar or wind, is what's called the intermittency problem, right? So if we think about solar power, you're only generating the electricity when the sun is shining. If you're thinking about wind, you're really only generating the electricity when the wind is blowing. And so there's a potential mismatch, right? If you're thinking about the perspective of Alabama Power or the grid regulator on how much power can be produced at any one time coming from renewables and when the power is needed on it. So as you think with it, how do you store electricity and change when generation occurs versus when it's consumption there is sort of one of the real challenges of bringing it onto the grid, so that, again, you don't wind up with periods of time where people are trying to turn on the lights or turn up the air conditioning in the nice heat wave that we're having, and there's no power there for them to consume.
Diversity seems to be a key. You mentioned some of the drawbacks of those forms. Another form of energy that certainly has been used in the past has been nuclear. A lot of people have talked about fears, right? You hear nuclear, you may think of 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl. In 2023, is nuclear is it a viable option to try to diversify power here in the state?
I think when you look at nuclear, so I'm also a behavioral economist, and this really gets into an area of interest within behavioral. There are risks associated with nuclear. There's risks associated with almost any activity that we have, right? But unfortunately, the risks with nuclear, if you have the damages can be quite severe, and they're dramatic, right? We think about Fukushima, you think about 3 Mile Island, you think about Chernobyl with it, and we tend to overweight or be over concerned about what are small potential risks, but large in damages. So these loom larger in our mind with it. So my personal thoughts are that we should, at least in the short run, while we're thinking about storage opportunities with it, nuclear is an option that we should be considering more of with it. Now, the question is, how do you get the general public on board with it? That's, a question that I think a lot are working on, but I don't think we have a good answer to.
To that end, how do you, with a source like that, how do you allay people's fears about something like that?
Good question. So we actually have recently started working with Tokyo Electric and Power Company around this question. It's something that they posed to some colleagues of mine in Japan with it, and everybody's sort of at a loss around this. But I think you have to make one possibility is make people understand the potential trade-offs that are involved with it. At least to the transition where we have grid level storage that you can bring the renewables on. Your choices are, coal and natural gas. You can use it as base load with it, or you have nuclear with it that do not have the intermittency problems with it. And so one is to get people thinking about what does the world look like if in the absence of nuclear, right? And that's what happens to prices with it. If as we all have seen with the war in Ukraine, on what can happen to natural gas prices on it, right? And if we think about there could be future shocks to energy prices with it that could have similar impacts, or the inability to meet the needs that we want, right? If we don't have enough electricity on the grid, they're going to have to shut portions of the grid down. So one is to get you thinking not only about the risks of nuclear, but what are the risks from not having nuclear on the grid potentially?
Very important questions that you raise here. Thank you for your time, Dr. Price.
So Dr. Price raises a number of concerns about storage when it comes to energy sources other than coal, gas, and nuclear. But as of now, under Alabama's existing power grid setup, our state is in good shape. According to the U.S. Energy Information System, power plants in our state are generating more power than Alabama needs. In fact, 1/3 of the power generated in Alabama is sold to other states. And that's an important fact to keep in mind as we transition into the next part of our town hall, meaning it's time for another town hall question. We asked, have you seriously considered purchasing an electric vehicle?
I don't. No, I probably should in this climate, but I don't.
I'd rather use the old vehicles.
It's funny, we've talked about it. We have talked about it.
Not to this point yet. We don't think the technology has evolved enough to where, you can only go 300 miles without charging, and we're just not interested in it at this point.
I don't know, maybe a hybrid. I'm not pro getting rid of gas.
The city of Montevallo in Shelby County recently opened its first electric vehicle charging station. It's one of thousands that will be needed as Alabama works to meet local demand as automakers transition models from gas to electric to meet new federal regulations. Alabama is expected to be an EV hub with automakers like Mercedes-Benz, Hyundai, Toyota, and Honda planning to step up the electric vehicle game. Alabama is number 4 among states in the nation for exporting automobiles. In Birmingham, Autocar in Pinson Valley produces large electrical industrial vehicles and trucks. In Anniston, New Flyer is making electric transit buses. And as consumers buy more EVs, our workforce is critical here in Alabama. Mercedes-Benz came to Alabama 26 years ago. I remember it well. It was a big day, which meant jobs and prosperity for our state. And today, Mercedes-Benz and Alabama's workforce continues to evolve and grow. The key to that growth appears to be embracing electric vehicles. I sat down with the president of Mercedes International in Vance, Michael Goebel. He says the future of EVs is already underway.
We are here in Tuscaloosa produced 264,000 cars last year. And we believe that we are pretty soon 1/3 of our production will be only electric car. That in 3-4 years we will get more products coming to Tuscaloosa. We are producing right now already 7 different models.
Goebel says for his company the future is exciting.
And we will see a transformation going from 100% combustions 2 years ago into a 1/3 to 2/3 within the next weeks or months.
By the end of the decade, vehicle production here will be at least 80% electric vehicles. The range of batteries, he says, should not be a concern.
I think we will have customers who will be fine with 250 to 350 miles, which is technology available right now. And we are having cars where we believe 600, 700 miles is also possible.
Goebel says the company will produce its own batteries near the automotive plant.
But we are putting the cell modules into the battery and producing them in Bibb County. And that was an exciting adventure.
That adventure meant adding more jobs.
For us, we increased our workforce by roughly 1,500 people over the last 2.5 years.
A total of 6,000 people work here in Vance. In the next decade, he hopes to be completely carbon neutral.
But we are completely convinced that driving zero emission is a very, very important part for a clean environment and to really keep this planet a good one also for the generations coming after us.
Mercedes-Benz is going a step further to cut emissions. The plant in Vance is being converted to run exclusively on solar. That leads us to our next town hall question. We asked, what concerns do you have about embracing electric vehicles?
Well, when I got my home charger level 2, they said that, if everybody did this at once, it'd probably be impossible for the grid to show up or hold up.
You go so far, then you have to charge it up so it can go dead. But you are better off because if you low on gas, you can find it. If you got electricity, you got to find a certain gas station that have electric.
The other con I would say is that if we have the unit in the house for an electric car, it could increase our electric bills, which that actually has been really high lately.
As our state and nation continues to embrace electric, hybrid, and fully electric vehicles, our infrastructure will have to adapt to support these vehicles. Kyra Purvis walks us through the cost businesses and consumers will likely pay.
Right now in the U.S., there's about 15 million cars sold each year in the U.S., and right now about 6.2% of those cars are electric. But we forecast that growth to occur fairly quickly over the next few years and reach about 30% electric by 2030.
Mike Oatridge with the University of Alabama Mobility and Power Center says this change is estimated to provide $600 billion in CapEx growth over the next 10 years. CapEx is what a company will spend to expand existing operations. Those costs have already started on the state level.
At this particular point, we've deployed about $7.2 million and actually installed or worked with people to install 41 charging stations.
This funding will go hand in hand with the $79 million that will be allocated to the state from the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, also known as NEVI. Those funds will be received over the next 5 years to install charging stations near all interstates across Alabama. As these electric vehicle charging stations become more common on our state roadways, local gas station owners may decide to make some costly adjustments to their provided services.
We're seeing a 50-year transition. So yeah, I think the gas pumps in especially residential areas will slowly taper off.
Gas station owners looking to make the switch could be looking at costs exceeding $100,000. According to the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation, a level 2 charging station for public spaces can cost anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 and has a charge rate of 20 to 50 miles per hour. A level 3 charging station for public spaces can cost anywhere from $95,000 to $200,000 and has a charge rate of more than 200 miles in 15 to 20 minutes. While some gas station owners could receive grants to help cover the costs, others will have to pay full price out of pocket. Boswell says that kind of switch won't be seen for decades.
Gasoline vehicles, combustible engines are not going away. I think you will see a change over time. You'll see those that wish to use the combustible engine. You'll see those that want to use the electric vehicle. So I think what you'll see in time will be a variety or a diverse opportunity for store owners to serve those travelers along the pathways that they so choose to travel.
Experts say many gas stations will bypass becoming full electric stations and will instead revamp into a new business or community resource. This is because the majority of the charging for these electric cars will be done in the home.
A good way to think about that is that if you had a gas pump in your garage at your house, how often would you go to the gas station? And that's virtually what it is. It's where you wake up and your car is fully filled up or charged every morning when you get up to go to work. So you're only really going to use a charging infrastructure when you're on longer trips further than the range of your car, which very honestly is not that often.
Kyra Purvis reporting. As infrastructure improves across the state, you may be more inclined to choose an EV for your next vehicle. I talked with Michael Staley, president of the Alabama Clean Fuels Coalition, about the advantages of driving an EV.
I've calculated that I spend probably 21 cents a mile to drive the truck on gas. And if the truck was electric, I would spend about 7 cents a mile on fuel. So it's about 1/3 of the fuel cost for a pickup truck.
And when it comes to the EV affecting your power bill, there are special rates you can get by talking to your power company, and charging overnight will save you money. Plus, there are rebates available for when you install a charging station at your home. And one of the big concerns about EVs is the life of the batteries. The good news, the latest generation of EVs have batteries that are lasting longer than ever.
And in fact, you've probably already noticed that with smaller devices you use every day, lithium-ion batteries power everything from the phone in your hands to laptops to your potential future electric vehicle. and that means we will need more of them. And it turns out Alabama has one of the components most needed to make them. Megan Scarano walks us through from mining to recycling lithium-ion batteries and how it could mean big business for Alabama.
In the heart of central Alabama lies Coosa County, home to the country's first site that will process coated spherical graphite, or CSPG, the mineral used to manufacture a lithium-ion battery.
About 50% of the contents for a lithium-ion battery is graphite.
John Strickland is the Director of Operations at West Water Resources in Kellyton. The plant broke ground in April of 2022 and will begin processing graphite by the end of 2024. Strickland credits the growing demand for the mineral to electric vehicles.
Plants are being built all over the United States now, which are being followed by battery plants. It's only a natural evolution that the raw materials for those battery plants come from companies within the United States.
The raw material will come from 42,000 acres in western Coosa County. Strickland says the location holds the largest continuous vein of graphite in the entire country. He breaks down how the graphite will go from the mine to a product ready for the battery manufacturer.
We bring the concentrate in a super sack from a mine site. We'll take it through our SPG building where we'll actually shape it, take it from a larger size to a smaller size.
This is just the beginning of the purification process for the graphite concentration. When the mineral comes to the plant, it will be 94% pure, but when it ships out, it will be 99.95% purified.
We'll actually wash the graphite and then superheat the graphite to get all the contaminants off of it. We'll take it into a coating process where we'll apply some chemicals to it to coat it, and we will bake that on it. And then we'll put it back in a super sack, and we will send that to a battery manufacturing site.
Once in operation, Strickland projects the plant will be able to process 7,500 metric tons of graphite its first year. Plus, there's already plans to ramp up production. When phase 2 of construction is complete, West Water Resources will process 40,000 metric tons of graphite per year. So you all haven't really opened yet, but you're already planning on expanding.
Correct. The demand, the domestic demand for graphite is enormous. So we're doing everything we can to get in front of that so that we can supply this domestically and we don't have to go international.
While the life of a lithium-ion battery will begin in Coosa County, that battery will not last forever. When the batteries eventually die, many will go to a site 115 miles away to a recycling facility in Tuscaloosa.
If we look at the concentration of the metals within the battery, it's much higher than it exists in the Earth's crust naturally. And so from an economic first principles perspective, it makes a lot of sense to take that material and process it and turn it back into new materials to go back into batteries.
Tim Johnston is the co-founder of Li-Cycle in Tuscaloosa. The company recycles spent lithium-ion batteries by recovering the black mass that contains nickel, cobalt, and lithium. Johnston says 95% of the battery can be recycled, even finding another use for the byproducts of the process, like plastic and aluminum.
I don't think you have electrification and therefore electric vehicles without recycling. I just don't fundamentally believe that A, we'll have enough materials to feed this growing demand that's coming from the sector, but also that people will really buy into the ethos of why they want an electric vehicle if they know at the end of this life of this vehicle is just going to be thrown away.
The recycling process all starts on the conveyor belt in Tuscaloosa,
where we're taking the battery, we're submersing it in a water-based solution, and we're breaking the battery up.
The facility can recycle up to 10,000 tons of lithium-ion batteries per year. To put that into perspective, that's 20,000 electric vehicle batteries and hundreds of thousands of cell phone batteries.
In the back end of the plant, we're separating out the metallic content, the copper, aluminum, the steel, from the black mass.
Li-Cycle services 200 customers. Mercedes-Benz is already sending over waste from their electric vehicle production. The demand for lithium-ion batteries doesn't appear to be breaking, so expanding production is in the future for Li-Cycle's Tuscaloosa location. All so the battery powering the electric car in the garage can live on.
Without recycling, we won't have an electric vehicle industry, because the reason why people are buying electric vehicles today is for sustainability, and if we can't recycle those batteries, these vehicles won't be sustainable.
Now, Strickland says based off projected figures, the mine in Coosa County has 35 to 40 years worth of graphite. As for the black mass recovered from lithium-ion batteries in Tuscaloosa, it is sent to a refinery in Rochester, New York, to be converted to battery-grade materials. Now, we certainly covered a lot of ground over the last hour.
Yeah, we started with where our power comes from, how it's regulated, and what the future of our state power grid could look like.
And Brenda, we also looked at the next great challenge, adapting our state's infrastructure to support auto manufacturers here in Alabama and consumers looking to get away from traditional gas combustion automobiles.
We hope you have a better understanding of where we've been and where we're going.
Thank you for watching this Town Hall special, Powering Alabama's Future.